We start the movie with Hanno in the city of Numidia, 16 years after the death of Maximus. We learn that his dream of liberating Rome did not come true, even though he died to achieve this dream. By the way, this city, in Africa, the borders between Morocco and Algeria are considered, and today the Roman occupation intends to attack it in order to occupy it like the rest of the countries that it attacked before. And Hanno and his wife Arshad were two of the soldiers who would defend Numidia against the Romans, and we see that the Roman naval fleet led by General Acacius arrived at the city, and this is Eugenius, the king of Numidia. He also participated in the battle against the Romans due to the small number of soldiers, and the Numidians began to destroy the Roman ships before they reached the city walls. And the Roman fleet was very strong and was able to repel their attacks with stronger attacks and killed a large number from the first attack. And Hanno is the commander of the Numidian army and is known for being very intelligent and brave. And the ships. They reached the city walls, and the Roman soldiers began to attack them. And their number was very large, and General Acacius also entered the middle of the battle. And we know that he is strong and brave and not afraid of death. And we see that the Roman army spread inside the city, and the situation began to get out of control. And Arish was one of the Romans, and she hunted the soldiers one after the other. The second, quite literally, Cassius decided to kill her at the same moment. And that actually happened. They shot her in the chest with an arrow, and Hanno saw her falling from the top of the city wall. He could not believe that she had died at that moment. A soldier came up behind him and hit him on the head, and he also fell into the sea. After a while, he woke up from the coma, and the army. The Romans had defeated them and occupied the city. He saw his wife dead and floating on the surface of the water, so he went to say goodbye to her. The Roman soldiers captured him, and thus he became one of the slaves or prisoners. General Acacius gathered all the dead of the war to burn them as a kind of respect. It was clear from the expression on his face that he was upset. He doesn't like what's happening, and he'll leave after a while. And Hanno was very focused on him, and memorized his appearance, so that when the time for revenge comes, he'll know. Agenda was still alive, and they were sealing their bodies like they do with all their prisoners and shipping them to the ship to take them to Rome. There, the events of the movie will begin, and Agenda thanks Hanno for help him and tell him, "I will not forget the first time you came to us when you were a little child and you were alone in the desert." And he is counting on him to die as soon as he reaches Rome, because he cannot bear what they might do to him. So he tells Hanno not to change, no matter what he does to him, and to remain as he is, a brave warrior, and he remembers. And he was young when he was in Egypt, after Lucilla had them escape from Rome. At that time, there was an occupation, and they wanted to kill him when they knew that he was the legitimate heir to rule Rome. The woman he was living with told him to escape, so he got on his horse and escaped until he reached Aganda. Now, the Roman army has reached the port of Oia in Rome, and we see the city's residents are cheering for General Axius for winning the battle as usual. Here we get to know the new kings of Rome, who are Geta and Carrack. The two are proud of Cassius and crowned him with the crown of kings. Carrack knew that they would start gladiatorial games in the Colosseum in his honor. But Axius had a request, which was to take a vacation away from Rome with his wife, to rest from the fatigue of war. But the two refused his request and told him that we still have a lot of work to finish. And Carca stressed to him that he would not take a leave until he occupied the lands of Persia and India and went to the city of Antium in Rome. But this is the city where the war captives are, and here they use the captives in games. Wrestling and survival will be the strongest, and the one responsible for all of this is a man named Macrinus, and this man will complete the movie with us until the end. Hanno and his agenda were present among the gladiators who will participate in today's battle, and people were throwing things at them as a kind of insult since they are enemies of Rome. And the battle now will be against a group of savage monkeys who he eats human flesh, and his agenda is because he is tired. So he decided to surrender from the beginning and sat on the ground. A monkey attacked him and bit his neck and killed him. Hanno beat him to protect him, so he got angry at him and attacked him as well. But Hanno was not easy and was able to beat him. Nos began to be careful with Hanno in order to choose someone to continue with him. The rest of the battles, and Hanno repelled the monkey's attack, and the strange thing is that it bit his hand with all its strength, and the monkey could not bear the bite, and then grabbed him by the neck with the chain and kept strangling him until he killed him. And Kronos stopped the battle before the new wrestler lost, because he admired Hanno's fighting style and his betrayals of his wife. And we know that he married Lucilla after that. Her husband and brother died, and she was upset because of the invasion they were carrying out. And she did not want him to continue with them, and Cassius did not like the situation either. And we saw this a little while ago, and he told her that he would not be the reason for killing any other young man for the sake of these two crazy people. And that if he carried out any campaign after that, it would be against them to remove them from their position and liberate Rome from them. And he shook off his words that he had prepared an army and had everything ready to implement the plan. The next day, Macrinus gathered the new gladiators and chose Hanno to fight with his gladiator, Figo, and said to him, "I saw you fighting with monkeys, so let's see if you know how to fight with humans too, or not." Vigo started hitting him with all his strength, so he became weak and decided to deal with him seriously and be able to block his blows. He threw him to the ground and was about to finish him off, but Macrinus stopped them and asked Vigo to bring him this wrestler and come after him. He started thanking him and his strength, and he thought that he would be an important wrestler who is making a great achievement with him. And Hanno told him, "I don't want to fight for you, and I want to take revenge on the Roman army." So Nos's cunning understood what he meant and told him, "You want to kill General Acasis, and I will do whatever you want. What's important now is that you fight for me and carry out my orders, and I will help you kill Acasis." So he took him and left with him. Roma, in order to start his journey and earn the best money, is supposed to enter a battle against the wrestler of Trax, so that they can choose one of them to continue in the arena of the Calcium. Gadida asked them to do 3 rounds with their hands, but Carcalla told them to fight each other with swords until one of them dies. Hanno is still telling the wrestler, Vincent, "No, we kill each other for them." But Vincent started to hit him and managed to make him drop the sword. And Hanno hit him hard on the head, and the sword fell from him as well. He hit him with all his strength and threw him on the ground. Vincent grabbed the sword again, and Han was in his hand and tried to block his blows with all his strength. But Vincent was strong and picked him up and threw him on the table. He was still. He was going to hit him again, but Hanno grabbed the sword and killed him to end the battle. Of course, Trax was upset about the death of his wrestler, and everyone was cheering for Hanno. This guy got up himself to greet him and ask him about his name and where he came from. But Hanno didn't want to answer him, and Macron S. told him that he was speaking his country's language. But he did not understand him. But Hanno replied to him and told him a verse of poetry that meant that the gates of hell are open day and night. They were concentrating on him and were happy with his style of recitation. And they asked Macrinus to prepare because they wanted to see his poet in the courtyard of the Colosseum. Then he went to him while he was calming himself and told him that the poetry, it is impossible that he learned it in Africa. He asked him who taught him this poetry. He told him that it was a Roman officer who was a prisoner of theirs. Macron was not easy, and he did not believe him, but he passed it on to him until he knew his exact story. Lucy went to the secret headquarters of the Senate so that they could devise a plan that would enable them to liberate Rome and its occupiers. He attacks Rome on the last day of the games, and Turks, one of the members of the council, tells him that this plan is dangerous for them. Vaxio and Wasilla tell him that if their plan succeeds, it will be in the interest of the Senate, and then the rule of Rome will be under their command, and they will be able to restore their reputation once again. Now, we will begin the first battle in the Colosseum Square, and Hanno and his team will be there, and we still don't know who they are against, and the Emperor well, and his brother Caracalla entered with them, Acacias and Lucy, and Acacias to the crowd with all humility, and the people were cheering him on, and it was clear that they loved him. And Hanno and his team entered the battlefield, and he began to look at Lucilla. And of course, he knows that this is his mother, but she still doesn't know. And the wrestler, who no one has ever been able to defeat until now, entered the arena riding a unicorn, and the battle began, and Hanno was the leader and told them to run away from him at the last moment. And he actually did that with the first attack. But it was clear that he knew what he was going to do well, and he was able to bring down one of them, so he decided to continue. With him first, after that, he looks for another, and indeed he took out a rope and threw it at his leg and made him fall to the ground. And the monster threw him with all his strength against the wall, and Hanno threw his sword and grabbed dirt from the floor and started smelling it. And Wasila noticed him, and of course this is Maximus's move, guys, for those who didn't watch the first part, and he kept standing in his face. And so that he understands that he wants him and focuses on him. And indeed, that is what happened. And he began to attack him, and Hanno remained in his place and threw dirt in the air and jumped at the last moment. And the monster entered the wall, and the wrestler fell to the ground, and everyone began to encourage Hanno. And the battle between them began, and it was strong and good. He asked his brother, "Isn't this the poet, but a caricature?" He said to him, "I don't remember, honestly, because I was drunk." So they thought about the verse he said. And here Lucilla was listening to him, and finished the verse. And Macron was focusing on her, and understood that she knew him, because not just anyone knows this verse. And we go back to them and see that the fight between them has become more intense, and the two of them are stronger than each other. But the wrestler, he was able to defeat Hanno and throw him to the ground, waiting for the order to kill him. But the whole crowd was asking for forgiveness, and Gita asked Lucilla about her opinion, and she also said she forgave him without thinking. And this confirmed to Macron that she really knew him well, because she did not think for a moment before responding to Gita. But Hanno, he told them in a loud voice that he did not want forgiveness from anyone. And indeed, the wrestler began to attack him again. So he was humiliated and was able to grab his weapon and block his blows and kill him. Without any thought, he decided to separate his head from his body permanently. Lucy entered a room in which this verse was written on the wall, and she began to remember Maximus while he was doing. From the same move that Hanno did before he died, he asked her about Lucius, and she told him that he was safe. At that time, she decided to smuggle him out of Rome, since he is the legitimate heir to rule Rome. This was so that no one would be able to reach him and kill him until he grows up and returns to rule Rome again. We see a man named Rayleigh being treated, Hanno's wounds, and they get to know each other, and they know that he was a wrestler like him one day, and with time he was able to gain his freedom, and decided from that time to help people instead of killing them. And she sent to Macron to find out from him where exactly he got his wrestlers from, and he told her that they are the fastest war. And she understood that he is one of the soldiers of Numidia. And Macron asked her about this statue, and she told him that it was her father when he was a young man. Of course, the resemblance between him and Hanno and Macron was very clear. Nose would not rest until he understood the story. So he asked one of the senators about Lucilla's son, and he learned that they had fled a long time ago, and that he was supposed to be alive. But no one knew where he was. Exactly. And he knew that his real father was not Lucius Verus, and Maximus was supposed to be his father. And the Means decided to go to him herself to see him and tell him that she was his mother, and asked him if he had a family, and he told her that he was married. But her husband killed his wife, so she called him by his real name, which is Lucius. But he told her that he did not. He doesn't know who she means, that his name is Hanno, that he has no mother or father, and that he doesn't remember any of them. When she started crying, he told her that her son died a long time ago, and that her presence here was unnecessary. She tried to justify her position and assure him that she didn't betray him as he believed, and she told him that he was her son, and that Maximus was his real father. Of course, this was something he didn't know about, but he got angry at her and threw her out of the room before anyone saw her. When she returned home, Axios learned that her son was still alive, and that she was with him now, and asked him to save him before his match tomorrow, so that he wouldn't die in it. The maid heard them, and in this situation, we understood that she was spying. They were on a certain side, and the next day they were training in rowing because the next battle would be of a completely different kind than usual. But Hanno made fun of Figo and told him that the matter was easy and that one person could row alone. So he decided to leave him alone and asked his team to stay away from him. And indeed, he began to row alone even though the matter was... It was very difficult, and it continued like this until nightfall. The next day, the battle began, and we saw them entering the calcium shore, which was full of water and sharks. Whoever fell into the water would definitely not have a chance to live among the sharks. The enemy's ship was in their face, and they began to burn their sails so that they could not move, and they killed several people. One of them, as we said, whoever falls into the water, the sharks will eat him at the same moment, because of the smell of blood. But Hanno was a very smart captain, and kept getting closer to them and the ship at the last moment, and broke all their oars. And the move pleased Macrinus, to the point that he could not control himself from laughing so much. And they turned around. On the second ship. But this time they decided to enter the middle of their ship to break it. And we see that the battle became epic, and the situation was getting out of control. And they attacked them with all their strength and killed a large number of them and threw them to the sharks. And the situation continued like this for a while. Good until the ships stopped at the emperor's chairs. And Hanno took advantage of this chaos and seized crossbow went to kill Acacius. But the ship moved with him, so the arrow reached next to Jadida and Kark, and they decided to withdraw from the place quickly before one of them was killed. The one who did this announced that Hanno's team was the one who won the battle. And this was very clear after they destroyed the enemies. Vigo asked about the one who hit the arrow and was surprised that they all said that at the same time Lucilla's maid went to Trax and told him everything she heard about their plan. Ness went to him and told him that this house is considered his because he owes him 10,000 dinars. He told him, "I can consider that you gave me my money on the condition that you tell me the truth." And indeed, Trax told him everything, and he told him that they would escape Hanno from the city tonight. And we see Axios and his men moving towards the prison where Hanno is in so that they can escape. At that time, the guards arrived at Lucilla's house and told her that the emperor wants to see her now, and Axios was surprised that all his soldiers died at the same moment, except for he and Gadida told them, "Thanks to the loyalty of Macrinus and Trix, we discovered your betrayal of us before it happened." And his words echoed, and he told him, "Kill me immediately, but don't lecture me." And Karak got angry at his response and wanted to kill him. But Gadida stopped him at the last moment and told him that they had to die in public in front of the masses so that they wouldn't. They did not bring him back, and he thanked Macrinus and told him that he remained his friend from today because of his loyalty to them. Macrinus assured him that what he said was true and that they had to die in front of the people as he said. Indeed, the next day, they tied Lucilla's hands to the chair so that she could watch Acacius die, and they made everyone know that they had betrayed Rome and tried to do. They rebelled and entered into a battle against 4 of his soldiers. Before he started, he expressed his respect for them. The battle began, and he was killing them one after the other with ease. He was able to defeat them all in less than a minute. Wasila was relieved as soon as he defeated them, but he was surprised that they announced a second battle against Hanu, who is her son. And of course, there is nothing dirtier than this when her son enters a battle against her husband. But this is the opportunity that Hanno has been waiting for a long time to take revenge on Axios. And Cassius told him to wait so he could tell him the truth. But Hanno did not have time to waste and began to attack him, and the sword fell from Axios, but he was able to stop it. Hanno struck him with courage and strength, and Hanno tried to kill him more than once, but Acacius knew how to avoid all his blows, and Hanno asked him to hold his weapon so that he could die with honor. And he attacked him again, and Cassius overcame him and threw him to the ground. And yet he refused to kill him, even though the opportunity came to him and he began to know the truth about him and his name. Lucius threw his weapon on the ground, announcing his surrender, and knelt down. Gita ordered Hanno to kill him, and he was going to do so. But Acacius assured him that he loved Lucilla and his father Maximus, and Hanno decided not to kill him. He threw his weapon as well and knelt down. Although Scylla was happy, her happiness was short-lived because of Gita. He ordered his soldiers to kill Axios, and that is what happened. They threw arrows at him until he died in front of everyone. The audience was surprised by what happened, and Hanno spoke to the audience in a loud voice and said to them, "If Axios has no value to them after what he did for them, then what is your value to them?" This angered them greatly against the emperor, and Karaki and no one was happier at that moment than Macrinus, because he did what was in his mind, and his plan was going as he wanted, and he asked them to leave the place quickly, because the situation was not safe for them. And at night he entered Hanna, and said to him, "I did for you what you asked of me, and I brought you his head until I want to understand why you didn't want to kill him, and let him live." Hanno assured him that he was free to make his own decisions, and that he was not his slave to carry out his orders. He asked him who he was, and what his real name was, before he became Macrinus. Macrinus laughed, and told him that you wouldn't know no matter what he did, and that he would remain a slave under his command until he died. At that time, the people revolted in front of the emperor's palace because they killed Laxid Kalan, because if the people reached them, they would kill him without hesitation. He got angry at Caracalla and poured whiskey on his face because of his monkey that was giving them a headache. Maker Naus went to him and said to him, "Your brother wants to blame you in front of the people and the council." The elders wanted him to continue ruling, and for the people to forgive him for what happened and stop the revolution against him. Of course, Macrinus was playing a dirty game to pit them against each other and reach the rule of Rome. Good was watching the people while he was creating chaos in front of the palace, and was surprised by his brother coming from behind him with a knife in his hand to kill him. He said to him, he threw the knife from his hand, but Kark hit him with it and hurt him. He tried to repel him with all his strength and asked Macrinus to pull him away from him, but Macrinus grabbed his hand and hit him with the knife in the neck repeatedly until he died. Lucy went to Hanna to give him Maximus's ring and told him that this ring belonged to her father. He gave it to Maximus because he trusted him and told him that Acacius was preparing his army to attack Rome and liberate it. Here, Lucius's true feelings appeared, and he expressed his love for his mother. Carci gathered the Senate to introduce them to the new consul, responsible for the military administration of Rome. Everyone was surprised that this consul was Dundus the monkey. His and the second surprise is that Macrinus also became a counselor and responsible for the administration of Rome with him. And of course, everyone was alive with fear, even though this was against their wishes. He had a good head with him after they cut it off, and he showed it in front of the entire council so that they would know the end of anyone who thought of betraying him. He told them that anyone who had an objection should not raise his hand, and anyone who, agreeing to the ruling, he raised his hand, and without any hesitation, everyone raised their hand like 1,000. And thus Macrinus became the new emperor of Rome, and hanno chiesto a Reili di rischiare la vita in cambio di un servizio che avrebbe fornito alle persone di Roma, e gli hanno dato l'anello che aveva preso da Lucilla per portarlo a someone named Darius, and told him that his real name is Lucius, and that he, the legitimate king of Rome, told him to ask Darius to send him the army of Acacius to defend Rome. Reili asked him if he should trust him or not, and Hanno told him to trust him. Before he left, he asked him for the keys to the dungeons, since he would leave anyway, and become one of them. Reili actually started to move, with all his speed to arrive before his battle tomorrow, and in the morning he arrived at the required place, and gave the ring to Darius, and as soon as Darius saw the ring, he asked him, "Who gave you this ring?" Freely told him that Lucius was the one who sent it, and Darius was surprised by his words, and indeed he began to move with him in the army, and they were going to Rome to liberate it, and Figo went there. And he told him that today would be his last battle, and gave him a wooden sword while he was making fun of him, and told him that he would defend Lucilla with it. But Lucius had opened the cell and hit him, and it appeared that he had opened all the cells for his friends, and they were able to overcome all the guards in the place and killed Vigo with the wooden sword that he had given him. After that, he went to the place where he took Maximus's tunic and his sword to fight with, and went out to the battlefield to defend Lucilla as they wanted, and his team was hiding, and we see that Lucilla is tied up in the middle of the Colosseum, and the senators who will die with her, and the guards started moving until they surrounded him so that he could fight them all alone. And as soon as he raised his sword, his entire team appeared and attacked the guards and killed them. The war commander Macrinus knew that Darius's army was entering Rome with 5,000 soldiers, so Nos's cunning ordered him to go out with his army and meet him before he reached him and killed them. The battle was raging and became epic. You don't know who is with whom and who is against whom. The crowd began to turn against the government. They killed the guards in front of them, and chaos spread all over the place. Here, Macrinus decided to take advantage of this opportunity and kill Caracalla in a strange way. so that he would be the ruler of Rome alone. Even though he went out to free Lucilla, Macrinus was following what was happening and decided to kill her as well. This actually happened, and the arrow entered the middle of her chest. It is impossible to live and ride his horse and escape from Calcium before anyone reaches him until things stabilize, but Lucius was behind him, watching him, and rode a horse to catch up with him before he escaped. And the Roman army was advancing to confront Darius's army, and Chrono was surprised that they were in front of him, and thus he would not be able to escape. And Lucius S. had reached him. He knew that he was the legitimate king of Rome, and that he loved him in order to liberate its people from injustice. Indeed, he headed towards him, raising his sword, and was able to knock him off his horse. The army was standing there watching and waiting for one person to win, because this was the custom of wars. The battle between them was strong, and we did not want to mock Macrinus's strength. Lucius's sword was broken because of the force of his blow, and with that, he no longer had a weapon, so Nos tricked him and kicked him in the lake and jumped after him to kill him. Lucius tried to block his blow, but Macrinus drowned him in the water. He was hitting him with the sword randomly, but all his blows were hitting Maximus's jacket. So he grabbed a rock from the ground and hit him in the face several times. The sword fell from him, and he grabbed the sword and cut off his hand before he could think of defending himself, and struck the final blow in his stomach. And thus Macrinus died, even though he deserved a more horrible death than this. After that, he threw the sword on the ground and began to speak to the two armies about freedom, and that Maximus and many soldiers died to liberate Rome from slavery and save him. His people from injustice, and of course his speech was long and full of moving words. But the important thing is that they were all convinced by his words, and those who did not know that he was the legitimate king of Rome knew the truth now, and everyone began to chant for freedom, which means that he was able to liberate Rome and became the new emperor. And the price of freedom was very high after his father, mother, and wife. Many people died, but in the end, he achieved Rome's dream and was able to free its destiny.